If you look at the back of your elbow right now, you might find a bug bite you never saw coming. A tiny midge can navigate the awkward curvature of your arm, landing exactly where your eyes can't track it. It begs the question, is that insect actually a strategic genius? In the insect world, you find even stranger behaviors. This image shows the cordyceps fungus erupting from the head of an infected ant. Before the ant died, the fungus forced it to climb up a tall plant stem and bite down, positioning the body perfectly to rain spores onto other ants below. It is tempting to think of the fungus as a mastermind, but a fungus has no brain and operates on just a few thousand genes. There is no specific DNA sequence labeled ant brain invasion. We casually label this concept as genetic programming. However, the mechanics of how a tiny string of biological code creates a highly specific, multi-step physical action remains a massive biological mystery. In the 1960s, a physicist named Seymour Benzer moved his research from bacteria to fruit flies. At the time, many researchers questioned whether genes influenced behavior at all, doubting that manipulations at the genetic level could yield meaningful results in complex actions. Benzer fed chemical mutagens to fruit flies and selected those with specific changes to their actions, like their tendency to walk toward a light source. These experiments yielded behavioral mutants that were both selectable and heritable, grounding behavior firmly in genetics for the first time. This finding created the Benzer paradox. We know that a single mutation can trigger a predisposition for a complex behavior, yet science has shown there is never a single gene for that specific behavior. To understand why this is so confusing, we have to look at the lowest level of genetic complexity. Take the period gene, discovered by one of Benzer's students, which dictates the daily circadian rhythms of a fly. This is a molecular machine we can map. As this diagram shows, the period gene produces a protein, which accumulates until it eventually cycles back to shut down its own production. It functions as a clean mechanical clock. This gene is easy to trace because it turns on and starts ticking after the fly's brain is already wired. But the period gene is a biological outlier. A clean mechanical relationship between a gene and a behavior is the exception, not the rule. Things get much messier at the next level of complexity. Consider the fruitless gene. This gene produces a transcription factor, a protein whose job is to regulate other genes, and it dictates the entirety of male fly courtship behavior. Transcription factors bind to dozens of different targets on the DNA, triggering the expression of hundreds of secondary genes. Those downstream genes interact to build thousands of specialized neurons over time, feeding into a cascading process known as algorithmic growth. Mutating a gene like fruitless alters the initial set of instructions, forcing the entire algorithmic growth process into a new configuration from the ground up. At the highest level of complexity, the process becomes a literal black box. Take the white rabbit gene, where mutations change a fly's physical resistance to alcohol. If you look at what that gene actually does at a microscopic level, it simply modifies the actin cytoskeleton, the internal structural skeleton found in every cell. There is a massive disconnect here. Scientists understand basic cell structure, but they have no way to predict how modifying a cell skeleton translates into a fly getting drunk later in life. Computer science uses Rule 110 to model this phenomenon. As this visualization shows, you can start with a few basic rules for a single row of squares, but applying those rules repeatedly generates a dense, unpredictable pattern. The developing brain operates this way. Mutating a general-purpose gene sets off an algorithm so convoluted that the final behavioral outcome is entirely unpredictable. This unpredictability led thinkers like Stephen Wolfram to conclude that natural selection achieved very little when faced with complex behaviors. If biological code acts like tangled spaghetti, where changing one small variable creates an unknowable cascade, it seems impossible for evolution to intentionally engineer a stealthy midge or a zombie ant parasite. This leaves us with a central question. If the biological code is an unpredictable black box, how does mindless evolution program such brilliant behaviors? The answer is that evolution does not need to understand the algorithm. It is a completely blind coder. Imagine a maze solving itself by brute force, thousands of blind tendrils hitting dead ends and dying, until one random branch breaches the exit and solidifies. Evolution selects strictly for the output. It blindly scrambles the genetic algorithm over and over. If a random mutation happens to make an insect better at hiding in your blind spot, that mutation survives. The cordyceps fungus has never learned neurobiology. Over millions of years, it simply mutated its host's algorithms until an ant happened to climb upwards. A single mutation can change who we are. Our behaviors are the highly selected, surviving outputs of nature's chaotic algorithms.